Warm welcome and welcome back at Feeling Terrific. So you already know what I'm going to say now. I'm very thankful that I have another special guest today with me. It's Jennifer. So thank you for taking the time, Jennifer. And I'm also very grateful that you are open to have the conversation in English. Thank, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you too for the invitation, Christian. I'm really happy to be here and so looking forward what we're going to talk about. So just yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, and as you know, as of now, there won't be kind of a script. There are no questions prepared, so it's like another chat with a great person. So let's dig right into it. Although we don't have an agenda, kind of, I'm going to start with a first comment of myself. So we met earlier, I think 1 or 2 years ago in a recruitment process, and I think it was kind of stuck between us then. We chatted sometimes on LinkedIn and so forth, and I'm very also thankful that we have kept the relationship kind of thing, because now we have the conversation today, and sometimes it's great to have a coffee, because based on the coffee we have now the conversation today in the podcast in English. So thank you for stepping out of your comfort zone and for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yes. So it's okay to do it in English. And yes, I'm also very, very grateful that we met a few years ago. I think it was already a few years ago. But it's often for me when I meet other recruiters and I really see potential, or when they have a really cool recruiting mindset, I always want to stay in touch. So for me, it's really, really cool that we're still connected and that we had now the chance to meet in person a few weeks ago, and that we also share the same passion, right, for podcasts.
That's true, and that's another thing I wanted to discuss with you about. But first, I would like to say, luckily, when we met in Munich, it was snowing, because otherwise you would have seen the sweat before meeting you.
Why? Why?
I don't know. I felt so much pressure. I don't know. No, all
No.
good. It went totally fine. It went totally fine. I survived, and yeah.
Okay.
No,
So
but
you did well for our very, very casual meeting.
that's true. But coming back to a very good point, what you've already mentioned, right? Doing a podcast. So as you might know or don't might know, Jennifer is also having a podcast. Maybe you give a little bit of intro, Jennifer.
Yeah, for sure. So maybe a little bit, I had a different way or reason or initial reason why I started this podcast. So it's not about recruiting, even when I'm working in the same field. I wanted to do something which is strongly connected to my really I would say passion, which is outside of recruiting, which is philosophy. So a few of you who might know me know that I'm a philosopher in and out, and I really love to spend my time on these things, because I think that every step in life is always also a philosophical step. But this science is so abstract sometimes and so hard to catch and hard to translate into your daily life, that I thought it would be really nice to have someone explaining these kind of stuff, or maybe making it more approachable, or somehow something you can, or more feasible as well. So something you can really connect with. And that's the reason why I started this podcast about philosophy. It's called A Life of Jen, Echt und Nah. So in English translated is like close and real and close. And that was the initial idea of the podcast.
Yeah, and I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong, but or you just also mentioned it kind of. The purpose why you created it or why you started it is because making it approachable to people who are not dealing with philosophy day in and day out, right?
Yeah, 100%. Because I think it was centuries ago when, I don't know, most of you might know Aristoteles or Socrates, and what they did hundreds and thousands of years ago was discussing with people the important questions in the world. And it kind of got lost, this kind of science, this kind of way of doing things, And yes, we have social media platforms. We're discussing things on that, but it often turns into opinions, or you get into a fight or something. But being philosophical is like, you can imagine, it's like green grass, and you can build and start an idea from scratch, and philosophy gives you tools to discuss it in a very scientific maybe way, but also in a way where you can find a common base to talk about it, and not like getting into a fight, for example.
Yeah. No, I mean, I just opened it again, so there are really good, good episodes on it, and I mean, probably I won't tune in for Hegel and whatsoever, but for the more practical kind of episodes, right? For example, one is regarding emotional hygiene, how you deal with it, or what is it basically in a crisis and in a daily life, right? I think emotional hygiene. Maybe you can give us a short intro to that.
Yeah, 100%. And unfortunately, that's what I wanted to say. It's in German, or maybe fortunate. Depends on where you come from.
But you know, Jennifer, that's a good thing, because then other people might be having a reason to learn German.
Yeah,
Going out of the comfort zone again. It's have fun.
good point. Yeah, this my episode about emotional hygiene. This is something I already read in a few books, and I think I also made a reference to a book I read about this topic, because I think that it's about I don't know, it's about emotional backpacking. It's also a book from a German psychologist who gave a kind of method how to clean you up in an emotional way, so to speak. Because hundreds of years ago, before we had the medical techniques to detect maybe viruses or something like that, there was no one aware that it was needed to wash your hands, for example, day in, day out, so that you can avoid these kind of diseases or sickness or something. And she's the psychologist I'm talking about in this episode is also kind of approaching us, or has a similar approach to emotions. So if you don't do regular things on a regular basis, and maybe establish a daily routine about how you're cleaning up your emotions, it's at some point in your life it will be an emotion overload, so to speak, and ruin everything, because there must be just one or two triggers, and then you're into rage, or getting angry, or you cannot control yourself anymore, because you put your emotions away all the time, and you don't feel it, or you don't handle it in the right way. And that can be really affect mental health as well.
Yeah, and I think the worst part about it is that you don't know why, right?
Yeah, you don't know why, because it's so the emotions you have, because you have emotions every day. You cannot avoid them. It's not something which is not there. It's always there. And it depends on how aware you made yourself about it, and how you handle these emotions, because otherwise they will be like get deeper and deeper into your emotional backpack, so to speak. And at some point in your life it comes out, and you don't know where these emotions came from, because it was so long ago when this emotion arose at some point.
Yeah, and you also already mentioned it. I mean, it can be kind of an intro, maybe there's another word, but intro to mental health, and whatever way it might be, right? Positive, or most of the time negative wise. So maybe, do you have an example, or what are you doing to keep on track, or to keep up front with your emotional backpack?
That's really good. I established a few routines, and I think everyone has their own routines to establish. There's just some suggestions from my side which really helped me, and to really keep it simple, because often psychologists recommend these kind of things, but I did a list at the very beginning, and really made bullet points well, and tried things out and really tried to figure out, okay, what works well, what doesn't work well for me. And in the end, it was things like having a walk, for example. I have my own Spotify list, which is called Soul Playlist. So that's for my inner soul. There are songs in there, for example, which I feel emotionally connected to. And I really know, okay, when I hear this song, this opens up my heart, so to speak. So I really have active trigger points and really take time to feel the emotion for example, when I have some spare time or in the evenings or something. I meditate a lot. This is also something. So especially when there is emotional crisis, so to speak, when I broke up with a boyfriend, sounds like I broke up with someone every 2 weeks, but something like this, for example.
We got the point.
Yeah, something like this. And then I meditate a lot and really like being aware and that this is a crisis, for example, or also I think I mentioned this in my podcast as well, because it's very, very personal. I had a divorce, and this was a very, very tough time for me afterwards. Even when I broke up the relationship, it was a really tough time. And that was also the time when I started meditating and giving space and room for these kind of emotions. And it helps you better through crisis. And then there is no harsh feelings left afterwards, or not that much. Of course, there will be always the memories. You will always remember some things, and these will always trigger some emotions, but not in a level where you cannot handle them anymore.
Yeah. So what would you say? So first, thank you for sharing that and being that open. So would you say self-reflection, being self-aware, and dealing proactively or directly with those emotions is the key?
Yeah, and I think every one of us has the potential. For a few people, it might be easier because how they were raised, or maybe how they grew up. For more people might be a little bit more difficult, because I also spoke to people who said, like, when I try to feel my feelings, there's like an inner obstacle. I cannot go across this obstacle. It's like a big, big wall. I cannot go behind it. So this is something where I was saying, okay, maybe other tools or support is needed in your case, but I think in general, every one of us has the potential and should do this. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, what would you say, what role plays mental health in general's life? So from a personal perspective, I mean, we already scratched it kind of, but also from a professional point of view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's everything, right? Mental health, because because it really depends and is strongly connected how we are working today and how we will work in the future. And if you read some books, maybe how the work or the labor market will look like in 10 years from now or 100 years from now, the trend will always go more into the direction that everything will be more automized. There were a lot more tech, things like everything will be, so we will really be close and work more closely with technology. That's the future. And that's where we are heading to. And the difference, what the human mind makes, what's the difference is creativity. And creativity only can happen when there is space, when there is room, and when your mind is healthy. So that's the base for it. So in a professional way, I would say yes, mental health, but first and foremost, always privately, and then in a second step, of course, professionally.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think we both agree when I say no job is worth your mental health, but not just your mental health, also your happiness. And I mean, some people might find happiness in the jobs, right? I think the majority finds the happiness outside of it. And yeah, for whomever it may seem more appropriate, then please choose whatever is best for you. But yeah, no, I mean, maybe one more comment regarding your podcast. I really like the second sentence. So first you have Life of Jen, and then Hautma.
Really?
Yeah. Sorry.
Real and close.
Real and close, yeah. And I mean, when I think about real and close, it's about authenticity, right? And I think this is really, coming through, or I feel it when I listen to your episode. So you have done a great job, or you're doing a great job, and I will keep beside you as a subscriber. So thank you for that. Yeah. No, maybe coming to a different topic. We already scratched the podcast. We already scratched, or maybe another question for the podcast. I'm quite interesting. When I started the podcast, I wasn't really pre-producing, right? So the craziest thing what happened was, I committed to publish an episode every Friday, and the craziest thing was I was in the office on a Friday in the morning. I think it was 8 a.m. and I recorded an episode. And this was like, it was kind of crazy, but I was lucky because no one was in the office at this time. So I had my own recording studio. But anyway, so now I'm pre-producing, and as we are talking today, it's not the same day as it will be published. So good for me, for my mental health. I made adjustments. But how did you deal with it when you start the podcast? Maybe thinking about the structure, maybe thinking about the approach. I think you're also having a different kind of approach, right? Because you're having seasons also, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 100%. And really good question. So I did it, I think, a little bit. I'm so an analytical and structured person. So when I first started my podcast, I did a lot of research how to do a podcast. I really followed the step-by-step list. Really, I did every task step by step, and they recommended at that point to pre-record some things or to prepare it in advance, like 5, 6, or 7 episodes in advance. And that's how I did it first for the first season. And you might hear the difference. So it's really structured. I made, a really structured script. I prepared, I researched in books to really have a good knowledge foundation when I'm sharing this. And that's maybe also the reason why the first season is mainly about philosophical basics, so to speak. And then it turned out, okay, it's a lot of work. It bored me. It was a little bit boring. And I was saying like, okay, because there was also very, very positive feedback about the emotional hygiene episode, not only from you, also from other people who reach out to me and say like, that was such a cool episode. And I was thinking, okay, that was maybe the one episode which was a little bit out of the order, out of the structure, because it was maybe more intuitive, and I shared a lot of personal stuff in there. And I was thinking, okay, maybe I have to be a lot more approachable and a lot more close when I share things which, go through my mind or which I have in mind right now. And that was the point. I think it started somewhere in season 2 that, and now it's like, okay, I made a kind of experience and get an insight out of it. And I was thinking, okay, maybe that's worth to do a podcast about it. And then I start doing it, and then I publish it right away. So that's my current approach.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I mean, when you think about having your or when you start, you think you are the expert, you have the perfect approach, the perfect structure and everything, right? And then I mean, for me, when I think about it, also not just from your story just now, right, but also from mine and other people. So this, what you've just mentioned, is the theory, right? So you approach it with a structure, etc., right? Which is well and necessary and so on, right? But I think the real authenticity, and this is what makes you unique and your podcast unique, or your whatever unique, right, is really happening, I think, when you get the feedback and when you think about it. So self-reflection also is a key here, I would say, and being self-aware how your whatever you create is being received, right? So this is very interesting because you also grow as a person per se during this time.
Yeah, thank you. I think I kind of had the same idea in mind. And also I think a lot of people can resonate with what I'm experiencing or what I'm talking about because it's so strongly connected to me and because we're talking about very sensitive topics as well because it's connected to my daily life. I think it's better to just talk about me and not making assumptions and like make generic statements like everyone is dealing with this or that and everyone should do this or that to solve it. So it's really like you can decide if you resonate with what I'm talking about, and then maybe you can pull one or two ideas or thoughts out of it and use it for yourself. So that's the idea. But one question: how do you do it? Do you prepare everything? Oh, you're not in the interview. Okay, you're.
No. All good, all good. I mean, this is a conversation, right? No, it's not an interview per se, right? So, but maybe park this question for now. I just wanted to drop something, right? Okay. So before we started the conversation, and when we were in the cafe and we're talking about it in theory, right? What we would do in practical. You mentioned, Christian, English, I'm not sure, and so on, right? Your English is much better than mine, so please stop, stop. Whatever it is. Yeah, please, can you ask the question again? I did forget
it. Yeah, but I'm dealing also with native speakers all day, and it really depends on my mood how well my English is. So. Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to ask how you structure yourself. So how do you prepare for each episode, or is it pre-recorded a few weeks in advance?
That's a good question. So as already mentioned, right, last year when I started, so maybe a little bit going further back. So it all started with the idea in summer last year, right? And from thinking about it to really doing it was a long time. So I planned everything and made thoughts, etc., but I really didn't start it. And the key was then, it sounds like a story or whatsoever, but one day I just started and I hit the record button and then it was there, right? And I also made a LinkedIn post and saying that it's kind of public now and that every Friday a new episode is coming. So it was kind of a commitment making this announcement publicly on LinkedIn. But sometimes you need a little bit of external motivation, I would say, right? And and the craziest thing was then doing the recording on a Friday for the same day. Yeah, don't ask me what in what kind of mental state I was. So this was kind of interesting, but it was a journey, a learning, right? As my mentor would say, a learning opportunity, and I'm quite open to learning opportunities. So lucky me. Yeah. Yeah, and this year I thought about it, and I also thought, okay, I don't want to have this same kind of mental state anymore, and I thought about doing it in a more structured way, right? So I was reaching out to a friend of mine who is working for an agency. So I hope I don't say it wrong, Miri, right? So if then I'm apologizing, but there I did get for example also a social media coaching, which was kind of interesting. It was blowing my mind. I think I did a post on LinkedIn which says working full-time and studying part-time, no problem. Working full-time and doing this and this, no problem. Working full-time and doing the social media coaching, mind-blowing. So this was really interesting. Yeah, but another thing is then also really pre-producing, right? And it's also interesting how to get the inspiration for episodes, right? I don't know how you're getting it, but for example, I use LinkedIn a lot, right? We talk to interesting persons all day long, right? But usually they are not the people we are talking to in episodes, right? But what I wanted to say is that we are used to it talking to people, right? And we are kind of open, or we are more likely to approach people. We don't have this kind of kind of boundaries or whatsoever, right? And it's really interesting. For example, I asked an old colleague from a previous company, and now we have this Thursday in the evening a recording, right? And he's in the US, so I was like, "Hey, I'm flexible regarding time, but don't do 11 p.m. CET, please." Yeah, but he was quite flexible. No, but yeah, I think pre-producing, as you've already mentioned, is kind of a good thing regarding also mental health. So maybe we should have had the conversation earlier before I started. But sometimes you just have to go through it, right? And then you are a much wiser person at the end. So
Yeah, setting boundaries is also part of becoming or getting a better mental health.
yeah. Maybe coming to a different topic, and just now for real. So there's no other question on my mind. But regarding women at LinkedIn, for example, or women at ServiceNow, right? So you're also in such an ESG, right?
Yeah. They're
Why
called.
are you there?
Yeah, they're called at LinkedIn because I'm working at LinkedIn. I think we never talked about it, but I'm working at LinkedIn. I'm a recruiter there or slash sourcer. And we have also as ServiceNow employee resource groups. So that's how it's called at LinkedIn. And I'm part of Women at LinkedIn since last year summer. And there I'm program manager for the Inspire pillar. That's how it's called, which means like I'm doing and supporting quarterly speaker series. So every quarter I do minimum one internal event for all employees around women and career, women and mental health, women and biases, women and so everything around these kind of things. And I really love this because LinkedIn gives the opportunity to give space and room for topics which normally don't have space within a professional environment. So that's really, really cool. I really love that. Yeah.
But shouldn't they have space? I mean, besides LinkedIn, right? And in general speaking, shouldn't they have space, and shouldn't they be seen as normal?
Yeah. A lot of things should be daily business, so to speak, especially when we're talking maybe about women in this instance, because, for example, how work structures or frameworks for working are built is mainly for men. And there are some countries, for example, which gives you day offs or women day offs when they have their period, because it's scientifically proven that they cannot deliver on these kind of days, or they deliver better when they have a few days off during their period, and then coming back to work refreshed and not feeling under pressure and not stressed because they might not reach their targets or cannot hit their weekly goal or something. So this should be really part of every work environment. And having these kind of groups like employee resource groups, it's just an initiative to get this goal starting, that at some point, maybe in the future, we have a different framework, a different design of how we're working together. But first, we need to sit at the table and talk about the topics and have a place, a seat at the table.
Yeah, no, I mean it's very important what you do for in this example, right? And as you also mentioned, I think there are a lot of things which should be normal but aren't, right? And isn't it quite interesting when things should be normal but aren't, and then there are people who are saying, "Why are we talking about this? Why is this? Why is this even a topic? It should be normal, right?" But as it should be normal but isn't, then we should talk about it.
Okay, that was difficult. And I need a little break because I need to do some things because I had a cold last week and I need to take 2 minutes.
Yeah, coming back to my question. So I think I also have to think about the question I asked, but hope you're doing well and doing better. So the question what I wanted to ask is basically, isn't it quite interesting when there are things which should be normal but aren't, and then there are people who are saying, why are we talking about such stuff? Because it should be normal, right? Why are we giving so much attention to it? It's kind of counterproductive. But at the end, because there are people like this, it's kind of important and needed that we talk about such stuff. For example, women, right?
Yeah, maybe then you and me belong to a group which might be 10% of all people in the world. We're very idealistic, maybe, because I would count myself to the idealistic persons, which means like I have an ideal idea of how things should be in my mind, because I think that it would be better for everyone. But not everyone is like us, right? Not everyone has idealistic ideas, and maybe we're wrong in some instances. So
Maybe, yeah.
we don't know everything, and I think there's always a truth to everything, even when you, how can I say it? We live in a dual world. We're getting really philosophical right now, because I think we live in a world where everything has two poles, two sides, like black and white, back and forth, up and down, like yin and yang, for example. So there's always a positive and a negative about stuff. So maybe being idealistic is like having a really good idea how things should go. And that's the reason why you and me are talking about women at, women at work, women in their career, and how things could change. And that's good, because we're the one who push things forward, which doesn't mean that all our ideas are correct, because sometimes it's better to stay at a certain point to create some learnings or deepness, or to rethink things, or I don't know. So there might be several reasons for this. Did this answer your question?
It does, and I think I agree with you. Yeah, because at the end, it's kind of relative, right? And no one knows everything. And I don't want to say that I, for example, know everything, right? But yeah, it's a good perspective, definitely. What do you think about that skills are replacing a job, or a college degree?
Yeah.
I did my homework. I read your post from months ago.
Yeah. I think it will be the future, skills first hiring, but we really have to be cautious what we define as a skill, because there are things like, for example, and this is a methodological skill. I think that skills first hiring will be the future of hiring, but it really depends how you define skills, because you need to be cautious. Because there are, for example, and this is also scientifically proven, that you know how to work with stakeholders, or you create a work ethic, so to speak, after minimum 2 years working in a full-time role. So this is something where you created or established the skills, work ethic or work mindset in today's work framing after 2 years. And that might be, a skill which, I don't know, is always a basic skill. So or for example, when we talk about degrees, because you mentioned degrees, because what you mainly learn at university is how to work scientifically. That's how you learn there. And if you can prove somehow different that you're also able to work scientifically, then you don't need to have a degree. That's my opinion.
No,
but we need to define, but we need to define criteria how these skills are measured. It's just maybe a different framework, I think.
No, I think in whatever way it may come, right? I think the very important thing is having the open mind for something new, right? For a new approach, also in terms of how the society will change in the future and so on, right? I think there will be much more challenges ahead of us, which requires adaptability or adjustments or whatsoever, but at least minimum an open mind. So I think this is at least something which we should learn about this about this discussion.
Yeah, 100%. And resilience, 100% resilience, because resilience is a skill which is strongly connected to all the stuff we talked about today, like to reflect yourself, to be self-aware, to know how to handle change, Yeah, and everything we talked about today, also like how you measure success, how you adapt to your environment, how dealing with change, with everything. That's resilience, and this is the skill we need to establish more.
Yeah. So I think we both agree that resilience is a very important skill, right? Do you have an example for us where you were self reflectiveness, or where you saw that you showed resilience?
Hmm. I think today it's really like it's already went over kind of into my daily habits. So I would not say that there are any bigger issues or examples, but I can tell you an example on maybe at the beginning of my in-house recruiting career, because that was the point in time where I made a lot of interesting experiences in recruiting. I said in the very beginning that I'm a very structured and analytical person, and maybe also a little bit too idealistic in some things. And when I started a few years ago in my first in-house recruiting role, I had a very clear idea on how things should go. And I made a plan, and I was very, very strict in my consequences and very, very pushy with my stakeholders. Very, very pushy, very, very strict. At some point, my manager came to me and said, like, we're still sitting all in the same boat. We're working into one goal. And if you're so strict, you just create borders and walls instead of creating collaboration and alignment and heading towards the same goal, for example. So you need to adjust your communication, and you need to have a more approachable communication. For example, ask questions instead of making statements, because that doesn't create borders. It shows curiosity and shows that people want to, that you're willing to create a base, a common base somehow, where we can talk about it, where you can align and work together. So this is an example which is really, really clear in my mind, and I remind myself a lot about this, because sometimes when I'm sitting with stakeholders, whatever kind of stakeholder, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, can we just not only do this or that? I know the answer, but then I remind myself and ask a question instead.
And how does it play out at the end?
It's always better. It's always better. So I made a really good progress in my career. So that was really, really good. And it turned out that I was one of the best recruiters and talent acquisition managers because of that, because I found a way how to communicate better with stakeholders and to collaborate better with stakeholders.
Yeah. No, that's a very good point. Would you also say, or what would you say if I say that passion, the balance between passion and patience apply to your example?
Phew. Okay, do you mean that, do you want me to go onto one side or position myself on one side, or what do you mean by this question?
Yeah, no. The thing is that in your example you've just described, right? It's about being, or also dealing with feedback, right? And feedback in whatever way. And in this example, it was a constructive feedback, which you could have taken, or you could have said, I don't want this feedback, I'm the best and whatsoever. But you did take the feedback. And so your passion was quite high, but your patience was quite low, right? After the feedback, the balance between passion and patience was in a better state. And then you were able to accelerate your development, your personal development, right?
Yeah.
Would you say yes or no?
I would say yes, but it was not like balanced at 50-50 after one example. So if you're changing your behavior, people are lazy. This is a process all the time. I think it got better over the last years. And every time I tried this approach with asking questions, I saw that I come to better results, quicker results. And I create, good relationships with stakeholders. So I saw that there is a better outcome in the end. And that made me change my behavior over time, yes. And now I would say I'm rather balanced, yes.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. Would you also say that I mean, as an example, right there, as you mentioned, it's a long process, and you probably are never will never be at the end of it. Would you also say that it's having also impact on your personal branding?
How do you mean, like, what do you mean exactly by that?
So you had just to describe the example, right? And then you said, okay, it's a progress and so on, right? And you have better relationships with the stakeholders or with specific stakeholders or whatsoever. And that at the end, as you have, or because of having better relationships with the stakeholders, your positioning or personal brand internally, but also externally, is much better.
Good question. I think internally it helped me a lot to position myself better. And therefore, when your position is better within an organization, you will get more, or more likely you will get good opportunities to also be visible inside and outside of an organization. So that's what I experienced. So for example, then my manager saw, okay, she made progress. She got better. She has now a really good standing in the company. I go with her to, for example, I don't know, networking events, put her on stage and let her talk, because obviously she has something to share because she learned something. And that was really, really cool. And then I got the feedback also from outside, and I saw, okay, things I'm talking about, it's interesting for people, and they want to hear these kind of use cases, examples, and stories, because they're dealing with the same things and they don't know what to do. And I think it's every time like this when you create a learning. I think that's what you wanted to go to. When you create a learning and you share this with others, it can be only helpful. I'm not sure why it should not. And sometimes, and that's maybe the other side of the coin, and that's something where I feel a little bit frustrated sometimes, there are still people out there who don't want to share their learnings, who are afraid to share anything they're doing, and they stay at a certain stage and they make no progress, and they don't process, and they feel maybe also like, I don't know, offended or overwhelmed by people who are open to share their stuff. And that's sometimes a pity. That's sometimes sad, because they're blocking things often. These are often the people who are blocking development and change and optimizations and process.
Yeah. No, to be honest, when I maybe a different example, but to your point, right? So, for example, when I think about leaving a company, right, and joining a different one, so not at the moment, right, but in general speaking, I also do my due diligence, and therefore I also want to know, okay, how is the organization, thinking? What is behind the wheel, what kind of atmosphere is there? What kind of culture is there, right? I mean, besides my current company, but when I talk to people, all of the time, at minimum, in one sentence, there's the word culture, right? And it's there for a reason. So yes, at the end, you want to work for a company with a great product or software or whatsoever, but at the end, it's about the people, and the people are creating the culture. And so it's definitely included in when I do my due diligence.
Yeah, 100%. So I think people-centric cultures or companies are the only organizations I want to be part of. And I'm happy that LinkedIn is. And obviously ServiceNow is also one of them. So that's really cool.
Yeah. No more questions. I mean, I didn't have any before, but I'm out of my thoughts. What is still on your side? Do you have anything on your mind? Anything we didn't cover, or anything you wanted to share?
No, I really liked your questions. So thank you very much for having me. And thank you for asking these kind of questions. I think they're really smart and they go really deep. And that's the reason why you're a good recruiter. So thank you. That's it.
And again, luckily it was snowing. So thank you for your time, Jennifer. It was a pleasure as always. And hope to see you soon in Munich again.
Bye-bye.